Shabbat shalom, everybody. Shabbat shalom, everybody. What's going on? Thank y'all for tuning in. I hope everybody enjoyed part one of the video of this Facebook Live here, where we was going over the letter that was sent to Pastor Omar Johnson. I'm sorry, Omar Johnson. Pastor Omar Thibeaux out in Lafayette, Louisiana, who is the pastor of a church, a thriving church, multicultural thriving church, where he teaches that Negroes in America are the children of Israel. And we looked at a letter that was sent to him by the Arabs pertaining to that notion or their perspective. Many have a perspective of dealing with that the letter isn't true, a letter is false, or whatnot. So we didn't too much deal with that in proving or being an apologist or defending him in that position. If that's what it is, it'll come out soon. So part two, we're going to be dealing with more so where we left off at. We're dealing with part one. As we do Hebrew tracking, what I mean is just going through some documents and stuff of that nature. We already compared at least three Arab leaders from in the mid 1900s, about 1950 to the present day. And this is one more video that y'all see on the screen. This is where we left off at. So we're going to go into that. I'm going to give brothers and sisters enough to jump in here. I see people are still coming in. People are still inviting people and stuff like that. So I'm going to give brothers and sisters the opportunity to come in. And not only did we deal with the Arabs, but we're going to also deal with some of our brothers over in Nigeria and different parts of Africa. We're going to look at some of their historical information or some of their documentation as well to bring it full circle. We're going to listen to some rabbis, not only black but white as well. All right, and hear from their perspective to bring this as a whole. So thank all of you for tuning in. I hope all of you enjoyed part one. If you have not seen part one, if you didn't watch part one, definitely feel free to watch part one, because part two is kind of like, okay, it's not going to really, it'll make sense, but you'll get a full understanding of where we came from in part number two. You'll see where we came from in part number one. Okay, so thank all of you for tuning in, man. I'm definitely appreciative. Thank all of you for taking out your time tonight on this Friday. And I hope everything is be well for brothers and sisters who are Hebrews. This is Shabbat. And so Shabbat Shalom to you as well. Other brothers and sisters, grace to you all. And so let's get ready. We're going to get ready to get tuned in here, get dialed up in here, as we see brothers and sisters still jumping in and coming on. And so we'll give it about 2 more minutes, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay. All right. Thank you all for definitely tuning in. All right, let's go and get started. We're going to replay this video, and then we're going to move on from there for some more documentation and time things in. As you see, this is Dr. Ahmed Al-Gandhi, okay, Egyptian expert on Jewish religions. He is an Arab, and so we're going to get his perspective, and then we're going to go from there. All right, the point is we're going to stay away from the whole notion of dealing with Negroes in America being, even though he's going to mention Negroes in here, which is a very distinct title, as we said in part number 1. It's very distinct when dealing with those people of color. Everybody that's a person of color is not identified as a Negro, okay? But that's a very distinct word, so we know who he's actually speaking of, especially when you start dealing with historical context, as well as biblical dictionaries and encyclopedias of that nature, all right? So let's keep rolling here, all right? Again, if you haven't saw part 1, you definitely want to check out part 1 to understand where we come from, all right? It'll give you it'll give you up to now to understand the conclusion of the matter. All right, so let's look at this. All right, come on, where it is. Come on, let's get to it.
اليهود في وقتنا الحالي هل هم لهم علاقة ببني إسرائيل في التاريخ القديم من ناحية العرق والجنس؟ يفترض أن بني إسرائيل في التاريخ القديم كانت لهم مواصفات جسمانية كطول الجسد وكعرض الجسد وشكل الرأس ولون البشرة ولون الشعر ولون العينين. هذه المواصفات التي يفترض أن الأبناء يولدوا دائما يتوارثونها. اليهود الآن منهم الزنجي ومنهم صاحب الشعر الأصفر ومنهم صاحب العيون الزرقاء، يعني تقريبا يتنوعوا ما بين أجناس البشر المختلفة، وبالتالي الحديث عن أن هؤلاء في العصر الحديث لهم علاقة ببني إسرائيل في التاريخ القديم هذا ليس صحيح. الرابط الوحيد بين هؤلاء وبين بني إسرائيل في التاريخ القديم بعد السبي البابلي أو قبل ذلك بالنسبة للذين كانوا يرتكبون المشاكل أو يسببون الأزمات التاريخية، الرابط هو الديانة وليس الرابط العرقي.
لماذا نجد الدموية لديهم والعنصرية؟
يبدو سبحان الله يبدو أنه شيء فطري فيهم. لأستاذنا الدكتور رشاد الشامي كتاب صدر عن سلسلة عالم معرفة اسمه الشخصية اليهودية والروح العدوانية. هذا الكتاب يؤكد الحقيقة على أن الروح العدوانية موجودة بعمق داخل هذه الشخصية. ولا يعني أبتعد كثيرا إذا قلت أن القرآن قبل ذلك أكد على هذا الأمر حينما تحدث عن قادم الفتن وإشعال الحروب ما بين الناس. فالأمر يبدو أنه يتعلق بالطبيعة، يعني يحتاج.
All right, so we saw in that video where he was talking about they were asking the question during an interview about were the modern day Israelis or Jews in the land of day, were they the people, and the guy, Dr. I forgot his name that quick, but he said that no, emphatically, no, historically they are not tied or connected to that. And then he started asking, well, who is? And he said the Negroes. He said Negroes, and then he also said, but there are different shades in which they come in, but modern day speaking, absolutely not. I'm just paraphrasing there. You can go back and rewatch this during the broadcast to see exactly what he was talking about. But that word Negro is very distinct and distinguished, and people around the world don't identify, call everybody that's of a dark race a Negro. Now let's move on. Let's go to some of the Hebrew rabbis. One is a brother who is on the documentary that I'm on, Reclaiming the Throne, that will be coming out. And Rabbi is on here, as well as there's another rabbi, Rabbi Ben Yehuda Shomer, which is a white guy. And both of them are going to get their perspective. So let's look at this, all right?
You are correct that the Ewe have the same oral history as the Gadangbes. The reason is because the Ewe are also direct descendants of the Hebrew Israelites that migrated to West Africa by way of Egypt to the Gold Coast and Slave Coast. Migrating from Israel through Egypt, Ethiopia, Southern Sudan, Niger, Nigeria, Dahomey, to Togo. The reason we have the same oral history is because we are actually one people. We're Hebrews. Let me explain. When you go back in time to a strip of land in West Africa that was once called the Slave Coast, you will notice this geographical area stretched from the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, Benin, Dahomey, and Nigeria. These four countries that now occupy this stretch of land was one territory before the Europeans met in 1844 in Berlin to define their trade zones, and as a result, divided the African continent amongst themselves.
My Hebrew name is Rabbi Yehuda ben Shomer, and my Igbo name, coming from the Hebrew, is Tochokwu, because Tochokwu and Yehuda mean the exact same thing, praise God, regarding the origins of the Igbo people. So I have a very brief and limited amount of time to do this, so let's get underway. So, if we're going to talk about the origins of the Igbo people, we've got to go back to the beginning, all the way back to Noah. It's to be understood scientifically that from Adam all the way till Noah, everybody at that point was born black. How do we know this? Because scientifically it could be no other way. Melanin, which is our skin tone, you have to have an abundance of melanin. You have to have all of the melanin there before you can genetically end up having a lack of it. It can't be the other way around. You can't have no melanin and all of a sudden out of nowhere produce melanin. So everybody up to that point was born black.
This strip of land from the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, Dahomey, Benin, and Nigeria was known as Ewe Nigba, that is Ewe land. And the people that occupied this stretch of land were called Ewes. Ewe is the original name of the people who lived on this stretch of land from Ghana to Nigeria. The name, however, morphed to Ewe because the V sound does not have an English equivalent. So the letter W was substituted for the V sound, and the name and pronunciation morphed to Ewe. Ewe is actually a female sheep. Where do we see the first time this name is used in the Torah? Genesis 14. And the fugitive came and told Abram, the Hebrew. The word rendered as Hebrew here is spelled Yud Resh Beit Ayin. In English, you will spell this I-V-R-I, and it's pronounced Ewe. So the text will read, Genesis 14, and the fugitive came and he told Abram the Ewe. Abraham the Ewe. Should you read from the Dead Sea Scrolls, you won't see the word Hebrew, but rather Ewe.
So when Noah got married, he married a black woman. He married because everybody else was black. And when he had his 3 sons, it's believed that this genetic albino trait triggered the different skin tones, the different shades of melanin within the human spectrum. From Shem came Jacob, which is the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, Jacob had 2 wives and 2 concubines. His wives, Rachel and Leah, were his cousins. Therefore, they were from Shem. Therefore, they had that middle of the road skin tone. They were that olive brown complexion. Now, we don't know the ethnicity or the race of Zilpah and Bilhah, the handmaids that Jacob also took as wives. But because Laban and his daughters, Rachel and Leah, and the concubine were living in the land of Canaan, and because Zilpah and Bilhah had this bond-servant type status, this concubine status, we believe that they were probably from Canaan. And all of the Canaanite nations, the 7 Canaanite nations whom Israel came to subdue and take over the land, which is the land of promise, they were from Canaan, and Canaan was from Ham, therefore they were all black.
What we now pronounce Ewe. This is the true name of the children of Israel, the Israelites. So where did the word Hebrew come from? we know it's Eve. Where did the word Hebrew come from? The word Hebrew is an English rendering of the Latin Hebraicus. Hebrew is a derivative of the Latin word Hebraicus. A little over 2,000 years ago, Judea became a province of the Roman Empire, who had Latin as their national language. All the literature that people wrote and read was written in Latin, and those that were not were translated into Latin. During the translation of the Torah, Eve became Hebraicus in Latin. If you notice, it's nowhere near Eve. Hebraicus and Eve, it's so far apart. After the Reformation in Europe, led by Martin Luther, translations of the Bible began into English. The translations were from the Latin version of the Bible, not from the original language.
You know, and several of the other tribes, we had Judah and Levi, they also married Canaanite women, and so therefore a lot of people from the tribe of Judah and Levi are also black. We know that the Limba tribe in Africa has been traced genetically back to the tribe of Levi. We know that there are a lot of black Jews as well, because the genetics show up even though they're a dark skin tone. So we know that Judah married a Canaanite woman and had some of his sons were black as well.
So instead of using the original name Eve, they translated the Latin rendering Hebraicus to English as Hebrew. Hebrew, therefore, is a double translation of Eve. The word Hebrew is a double translation of the original word Eve. From the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, Benin, Dahomey, and Nigeria, what you have without the artificial boundaries by the Europeans is Eve Nyugba, Eve land, or Hebrew land. We used to be one people, speaking the same Eve tongue.
And Ibu is also believed to be a corruption of the word Hebrew. Hebrew, Ibu. See how similar they sound? And the second law of thermodynamics, which means everything degrades, would lend to this vocabulary instance. Just as, for instance, in English, we'll say, hey, what is up? What is up comes to what's up. What's up eventually becomes what's up. You see how it shortens over time? So it's the same with the word Hebrew. That's what the 10 tribes were considered. They were considered Hebrews. So Gad would have been considered a Hebrew. So the word Hebrew goes to the word Ibu. It's a corruption. Even the one of the first missionaries to Ibu land, which was G.T. Gadsden, an Anglican missionary, he also believed that the word Ibu was a corruption of the word Hebrew.
One will ask, how did we then lose the Hebrew tongue and now have so many dialects? Well, it's interesting, but wars have been fought, both interesting and sad. The wars have been fought, and many have died because of the problem of variation of dialect. And because of the lack of written history, we did not know we were fighting our own brothers and sisters. Who said we don't speak Eve? Who said we don't still speak Hebrew? Who said the original Eve tongue is lost?
You also had the destruction of the temple during 70 A.D., which precipitated another wave of Jews and Israelites scattering abroad, some going to Nigeria. In James, the book of James 1:1, it says, to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. So up until that point, the Jews knew where their 10 brothers were scattered, because the letter was to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. So they knew that many of their brothers had made it to what we call today Nigeria. And so the letter was for them as well. So you also had the revolt at Masada. According to history, you have been taught that everybody committed suicide. All the Jews and the Israelites that were there, held up in the fortress of Masada, committed suicide. But Josephus says that some escaped, and some sailed off into the direction of what we know as the Americas, and some were believed to make it to Nigeria. You also have the modern diaspora, where people are waking up to their genetic ancestral identity, and a lot of people recognizing they're coming from the lost 10 tribes, and specifically the Ibu, are making their way back to Ibu land.
All right. So in that video, brothers, if you're just not tuning in, this is part 2. I've already dealt with the letter when we're talking about dealing with Pastor Omar Thibeaux out in Louisiana. I already dealt with that. And now we're just tracing and tracking. We compared dealing with the Arabs. We've already dealt with the Arabs and what the Arabs have said when it comes down to the things that are happening over there, reason why it's not a shocker with the letter. So I would advise brothers and sisters, if you're just not tuning in, you definitely want to see part 1 if you have not saw it. We dropped a lot of information, a lot of jewels dealing with the letter all the way up to now. So now we're just doing some more tracking and tracing in literature timelines. You just heard from 2 rabbis, 2 different ethnicities, both of them, Rabbi Akwete, who never lost his heritage. He never lost his heritage. He never lost any of that. He knows it's like the several generations of knowing who he is and knowing the history, the diaspora, the slave trade, all of that. So Rabbi Akwete is definitely, he's a brother that's on the documentary that I'll be on coming up as well, Reclaiming the Throne. And you had Rabbi Ben Shomer, who understands the history and the diaspora and all that information. So both of them are saying the same thing, 2 different races, 2 different nationalities, and both of them are saying the same thing historically when it comes down to the diaspora and certain things of that nature. Now, let's move on, because he mentioned something. He mentioned, Rabbi Akwete mentioned about Togo, Benin, Cameroon, all these different areas, and all of these different areas, when I did my DNA, showed up on my DNA. In fact, pretty much all of the land of Nigeria in that area, as well as the different tribes who still today keep the customs of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, keep the Torah, are still in the land. And when I forwarded over to him, he was like, it's official. You didn't even have to go through all that. But I didn't put up my DNA information on here. I'm just saving that. You got to keep stuff in the background, because people like to try you around here. People like to try you and try to, you don't know your history, and you don't know where you come from and all this kind of stuff. And you got to keep stuff in the background. You can't show everything to everybody. So when they try to try you and start talking this craziness, you have something to pull out the holster on and, during the time of any type of conversation or any type of information like that, or any type of, they want to put you to the fire or whatnot. So a lot of things, you keep in the holster, and you deal with it from that perspective. You don't have to show everything to everybody. And that's why I say, it's a lot of stuff that I got tucked off in the safe, just waiting on that day for when I got to pull it out and deal with somebody in some form of debate or something of that nature. All right. So let's move on here. All right. Let's go to the next thing here. All right, what you see here is on the screen, okay? What you see on the screen is a book. And y'all know generally I don't like to tell y'all to go deal with these books. I want brothers and sisters to be sharp and equipped in the Bible. I don't want them to try to go off all out here and get so consumed they caught up with information, okay? But what we seeing on the screen is a book that I have, which is a book that they tried to actually ban from the States. But this is an awesome book. This book has a lot of information that Rabbi Akwete said, a lot of information that Rabbi Ben Shomer said. It all lines up with the information. Okay, so definitely, if you want to get a book, you want to get this book. Again, I try my best not to display or show a whole lot of books outside of the Bible. But if you do, make sure that the books that are outside the Bible never replace the primary source, which is the Bible. Okay. At the end of the day, all of this is good, knowing your heritage, but it also, the most important thing I want to tell you guys is that salvation is the most important thing. If you never embrace your heritage and you embrace Christ as your Messiah, and you keep God's commandments, living righteous, all right, and the way that so you're striving towards perfection, then you'll be fine. It's nothing wrong with heritage. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem comes is when brothers start trying to make heritage their way into the kingdom. And it doesn't matter if you know your heritage. It doesn't guarantee you in the kingdom. It's a lot of brothers and sisters that embrace their heritage going to find themselves in the fire. Straight up. Okay? So I want y'all to understand the reason why I do this is for the importance of knowing heritage, but it never is going to replace salvation. Okay? You will never hear me say to you, and a lot of times, brothers, I don't like to say never, but I will never tell you that your knowing your heritage comes before salvation. I would never tell y'all that, brothers and sisters. Okay? This is important to know. Okay? It's good to know, but if you're going to take this and try to make this as a means of an automatic ticket into the kingdom, I'm sorry to tell you, you're not going to make it. Okay? I want y'all to understand my position and where I'm coming from with this. Okay? Salvation first over anything. All right? Now, let's look at this book here. All right? Let's look at this here. Thibeaux. Okay? You heard him just talking about Thibeaux. All right? Thibeaux. All right? This book includes over 25% African Americans. Hebrew exile from Israel, amazing facts and revelations, okay? Professor O. Alazi, okay? We talking about brother from Nigeria. Y'all know y'all love the doctors. Y'all love the professors. Y'all love the big time people with degrees and all kind of initials after and before their name. Y'all love all that stuff. So I gotta show it to you to give it to you, all right? And I know you can't hardly see it very good, but what I want to do is I want to try to put it up here so y'all can kind of see, all right, where I'm coming from here, so y'all can kind of look at it best as possible, all right? Let me try to lift it up here, okay? This is the book right here, all right? Thibeaux, Hebrew exile, all right? Includes over 25% African Americans, Hebrew exile from Israel, amazing facts of revelation, Professor O. Alazi, okay? And this is him right here, okay? All right. Author, Professor Onwukwe Alazi, M.A. Ed, okay? Here it is right here. He has a Ph.D., all right? Is well-published author with outstanding good numbers of local and international learning journal articles, as well as books on diverse issues in education and African Hebrew studies. Professor Alazi is founder of Hebrew General of Nigerian Hebrew Renaissance, all right, a Nigeria-based non-governmental Jewish rebirth of Hebrew studies group for the discovery and ingathering of Nigerian Hebrews, parentheses Thibeaux, all right, into the world Jewry. Listen here, all right. This book, all right, let's see. This book, Thibeaux, includes over 1/4 African Americans, Hebrew exile from Israel. Amazing facts and revelation, all right, American edition, rings with the excitement of prophecies of the holy prophet of the Almighty God of Israel. All right. And y'all can, once you get your book, you can read that. I just want to put that up so you can see it. I wish you was in front of me so you can actually see all this. But we're going to flip through a couple of the pages in there. All right. So we're going to deal with a couple of the pages in here. Let's see. Move here. All right. This is a page in the book. All right. To the right, I'm pretty sure many of you already seen this. This is a popular picture, a popular flyer that many have seen during the time of slavery once they came off the ships. You heard Rabbi Akwati as well as Rabbi Shomer. Both of them was talking about the corruption of the name Thibeaux to Hebrews to Negroes. All right. It's basically if you know how we talk about transliterated words, those in the scholarly field of understanding of basic scholarship understand transliteration and stuff like that. Okay, when you look at this right here, this flyer is in the book, and it's talking about, all right, during the time of slavery, this was one of the flyers that they were passing around to promote slave trading or buying of the slaves. Okay, This is what you see here. This is what they had in America, all right, as well as some of the other places during the time of slavery, all right. So this is a famous picture. You can find this online. This picture is circulating everywhere, and you can get this book. This book is on Amazon. You can buy it in a couple of different places if you want to buy it. It's not that expensive as well, but it's good to have in your arsenal, all right. Now let's go to another page, all right. This is another page. You see, I got lines all in here where I'm writing, in my book. This is it right here. But this is chapter number 2. All right, this is chapter number 2, page number 16 in the book. Let's see what it says here. Let me try to lift it up so y'all can see exactly what I'm talking about. I know y'all won't be able to read it in its totality, but I want to give you a little bit of it here. All right. Israel and the reality of Torah/Bible. In this book, I have sort of established or reestablished the fact that the Igbos of Nigeria, the Tutsis of East Africa, and the Balimikis of Cameroon, and a few thousand other Africans scattered in South Africa, Ghana, and over 25% of all African Americans are of Jewish origin. If I have to say this out aloud, general laughter, mockery, abuse, and harassment from certain quarters would be the response. Maybe in a few years' time, certainly around the soon coming Third World War, when in keeping with the Almighty's unchangeable divine plan for the conclusion of the present earth cycle, the gathering back of the scattered Jews from the four corners of the earth. All right, let me sit that down for a minute. I can definitely relate to that, Professor Al-Aziz, when you start talking about mentioning this type of stuff. He said, if I say this out loud, it'll be a lot of laughter. People laugh at you. And in fact, people laugh at you all the time. People mock you, call you a heretic, all this other stuff, okay? They say all kind of other stuff. No matter what type of information and evidence you present, it's always somebody is going to tell you, oh, no, you're not. Oh, no. Hey, African Americans, no, they from Ham. They from Ham, all this other stuff. All right. So, but this is what he's saying. He's a professor, well-versed in the field, scholar. He gives, and throughout the book, he gives timelines. I know my brother Berean, he be horrible on that. One thing I remember by Brother Berean, he always said, what's the timeline? What is your timeline? So if now, for me, I'm thumbing through books and looking through books and all this other stuff. They ain't got no timelines. I don't mess with it. All right. That brother say he's not the sharpest brother knife in the drawer, but I'm sorry, he is. He's very impactful on a lot of brothers. All right, but let's look at this here. This is page number 2, verse. This is chapter number 2. This is page number 16. All right, and you can kind of read that. All right, now let's move here. Let's go to another part of the book. All right, this right here gives even more information. All right, let's see what else is in here. All right, let's see here. Aunt Patty said over 25%. All right, over 25%. So whatever that percentage is over that, I can't tell you exactly what it is over that, because you have to remember he's saying 25%, over 25% are Igbos. That doesn't include the Yoruba or the Limba or others. You could be Limba, you could be Yoruba, you could be Igbo. He's just saying over 25% are Igbos. All right. He's not including Yorubas. All right. And we know that Yorubas have the genetic trait as well and the Y chromosome as well as other Nigerian tribes. All right. So don't panic on that, brother, because I have Yoruba in me as well. All right. So let's look at this here. Let's see what it says. The view of the origin of Igbos in Israel by reason of social behavior. Okay, the views of the origin of the Igbos in Israel by reason of social behavior. Remember, this book is about the Igbos. It's not about the Yorubas. All right. By the reason of social behavior and cultural similarities was first expressed in about 1789 by the Igbo ex-slave in London, Oluda Equiano. We know about Oluda Equiano in his writings, The Interesting Narrative and Igbo Society, and in mid-century, all right, ethnographically and culturally, Equiano likened his people, the Thibeaux, to the Jews or Hebrews. All right, strong analogy, which even by this sketch, imperfect as it appears, to prevail in the manner and custom of Thibeaux, which is Hebrew, and those of the Hebrews, the Israelites, an analogy which induce him to conclude that the one people had sprung from the other. Okay, so this was a comparison. Those who call Thibeaux and Olu Equiano came up with the distinction based off the customs that was being kept, that the Thibeaux, those who were identified as Thibeaux, were actually Hebrews, even though it's a corrupt word, as both of the rabbis were saying. All right, now let's move on here. All right, because I don't want to harbor too long on reading a long part of the book. If you get the book, all the information is in there. All right, this is the book of Ola Equiano. All right, if you don't have that, this is also another book, powerful book, all right, that you want to definitely get your hands on, that will match up and line up with what the rabbi said, as well as what Dr. Al-Aziz said, Professor Al-Aziz, all right, who mentions Ola Equiano in his book. And this on the screen, this is the book or the diary of Ola Equiano, who was a slave who came to America, who knew he was a Hebrew, okay? And when he got to the North America and the West Indies, he saw others in Virginia and other places over here in America were keeping the customs from the time they got on the ship to the time they got off the ship. During the time of the disbursement and the selling of the slaves, they were keeping the customs before the laws were put in place that they could not keep the customs, they could not speak their language, they could not do any of these things. So that's how, when those laws got instituted and put in place, that's how brothers and sisters forgot a lot of the customs of that day and of that time, as well as the language as well. So once you start getting all this information and comparing all these books, and you start dealing with non-objective scholarship from people who were not only of European descent, but even the Jewish rabbis, whether they are identified as melanin or not, all of their story, when you start taking the collection of the information, all of them are saying the exact same thing, but that's only if you want to deal in that area of objective scholarship. If you don't want to deal in that area of objective scholarship and none of this matters to you, then that's fine, you know. But the issue is you shouldn't be knocking somebody else who's studying it and dealing in these other areas of dealing with scholarship and trying to knock them and say, oh, well, why does it matter? Why are you studying that? Well, that's just like a person that goes to school to study study history. You know, you don't tell them, why are you taking the history class? Well, because I want to learn history. I want to know history. Well, it don't matter. Like, you shouldn't say that. Okay? You don't say that to a person that's taking a history course. All right? In college. Well, it don't matter. Why are you worried about what Abraham Lincoln had to say? Why are you worried about what George Washington? You don't tell them that. But only when it comes down to dealing in these type of areas is when people start saying, why is it important? Why you want to talk about that? Why you want to deal with that? Because my heritage is important to me. It may not be important to you. I don't knock you for not wanting to know your heritage, but don't knock me for wanting to know mine. Okay? That's the difference. That's where we have to walk the road together. And if you're not interested, it's just like some people aren't interested in basketball. But because if I'm interested in basketball, don't knock me for being interested in it, because you can't play basketball and I can. So therefore, if I can, my interest is in basketball because you haven't been given the skill in that area. Don't hate on me because I'm taking the skill that was given to me and putting forth all my time and energy to learn how to be the best player that I can. Okay? That's what this is about. Everybody's not going to teach this. This is the thing that I want brothers to understand. Okay? Stop knocking people who don't want to, who will tell you, you know what? I'm not, that's not really something I'm worried about. I don't want to teach that. Well, okay, don't knock brothers who don't want to teach it. Just say, okay, fine, because everybody's not going to teach history. Everybody's not going to teach to this level. Everybody's not going to have the interest to. If people aren't interested in it, how can you expect them to teach it? If you've been graced with the interest to it, then why don't you turn around and you go ahead and walk in what you were called to be, and then to let other people walk in what they want to walk in and what they was called to be. You do the best and teach the best and learn the best and take the tools that's been given to you and the passion that's been given to you to research the information objectively. And that way you can take it from a scriptural perspective and apply the history to the scriptures and do it objectively so you can reach people. But if you want to use this as a weapon, not objectively, but as a weapon to show what you know, to belittle and degrade people, you will not be effective in the kingdom. Okay? So I thank all of you guys for joining. We're going to end it right there. All right, finishing up part 2. I wanted to do it all a one lesson thing, but I couldn't. I had something I had to do. So go back and check out part number 1. All right, I will be uploading this to my YouTube page, but go ahead and check out part 1, and then you can come back and check out part 2. I may try to download them and try to merge them together and just put it all on YouTube in one lesson, but I'll see how that goes. If not, then both part 1 and part 2 will be up there. And so I hope all of you got a lot of information out of this, listening to both rabbis, Rabbi Akweti as well as Shomer, as well as the book. You know, definitely want to get that book, right? You want to get the Diary of Ola Uda. You want to get that. You also want to get the book here of the Hebrew exile from Israel, the Thibeaux. This book is geared totally to the breakdown of the Thibeaux. This has nothing to do with the Yoruba. There were Yorubas that was put on ships as well, okay? Which, as Rabbi Akweti was saying, that many of them who had different dialects, like Bantu dialect, were brothers that they didn't know because of things that was going on when the Europeans took and parted the land. Okay? When they start taking and start parting the land and dividing up the land, a lot of the brothers didn't know. Okay? So you have Yorubas, you have Thibeaux, even though many of them could be the same people, but yet going by 2 different names or whatnot. And so the confusion came in once the Europeans start parting up the land and naming it Cameroon, start naming it Ghana, naming it the Ivory Coast. At one point in time, it was all one land. There was no dividing of the land and the names and all this other stuff. Okay? It was all one land. All right? One landmass before the division came and dividing up the same way America was. All one land, and when the Europeans got hold of it, they started naming it Florida. They started naming it Georgia, North Carolina. All these other places start parting the land up, okay? Same thing over in the Middle East, or the so-called Middle East, Northeast Africa. Parting the land, start naming it different things of that nature, all right? So I hope all of you guys were impacted. I hope all of you got some understanding out of this. And definitely go back and watch part 1 and part 2 of this lesson. Part 1, I dealt with the letter, dealing with Omar Thibeaux, and then we gravitated and moved into the Arabs, listening there with the comparison with the Arabs, and then we came and we transitioned into the rabbis, Shomer as well as Akweti, and then we dealt with the book here dealing with the Professor Al-Aziz, all right, not from Nigeria, and we moved into Ola Uda. All right, so I'm gonna get off here, man. I hope y'all check this out. Definitely like and share. And I'll see you guys next time. All right. Shabbat shalom.